You know, in my life's experience, not only have I been hurt by the organized church, but I know there are a lot of other people who've been hurt also. In fact, one of the statistics that are coming out now is that many people are leaving the faith or the religion in which they were raised and either going into another religion entirely or opting for no religion at all. They call them the nuns, and the N-O-N-E-S. And I can understand that because to be hurt by the church or by those who call themselves by God's name, sometimes we equate that with God Himself, so that we feel hurt by God. We feel if the church has rejected us, then God has rejected us. And so for myself, when I was rejected by the church, and I've had not just one bad experience, but multiple bad experiences at the hands of those who call themselves by God's name, rather than drive me away from God, it's caused me to want to look past them or above them and to pursue God Himself, because God is not necessarily like the church, and He's not necessarily like the people who call themselves by His name. And I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I don't want those people to have the ultimate, in a sense, vengeance on me by causing me to reject faith and reject God by the way they've behaved. Their behavior is their problem, and that's their responsibility. But I don't want to affect my relationship with God except to cause me to pursue Him even more diligently and to pursue Him with more urgency, because I want to know Him as He is. And for people today who've been hurt by the church or hurt by those who call themselves by God's name, I would just want to reach out to them and say that God is not like that. God loves them. And to know Him in a personal relationship and to enter into the friendship that Abraham experienced with Him is to put a reason in your heart to get up every morning. It puts a lift in your step and a light in your eye. There's a beautiful story in the life of Abraham that involved Hagar, who was the woman with whom he had had Ishmael. And he had tried to rush God's promise when God had promised him a son. God had promised Isaac through Sarah, but instead Abraham had a son by Hagar. And there's a point in the story when things become so difficult between Sarah and Hagar that Sarah abuses Hagar and drives her away from the home. And so Hagar is this little girl who's been driven away from God's people by one of God's people, and she winds up in the desert alone, scared, and God comes and searches her out. And there's the beautiful scene where the angel of the Lord comes to Hagar and lets her know that He loves her, that He has a plan and purpose for her life. He draws out a confession from her, but then lets her know what she needs to do to set her life right. But it's a beautiful picture of people today that perhaps have been hurt by those who call themselves by God's name, and they find themselves on the periphery, maybe outside the church, or maybe they're one of the nuns, and God is not bound by the church walls, and he reaches those outside the church. And He did Hagar, and she discovered that God was the one who sees her and who knows her and who had a plan and purpose for her life. So there are many wonderful stories to be drawn, and that one in particular, I think today, when there's so many people hurt by organized religion, that not to equate organized religion with God, because God loves you, and He's not like a lot of the people who represent Him.